Welcome to The Raw Truth. I'm your host, LD FAISON. Today's topic is men's anger and domestic violence. Today's guest is Dr. Douglas Gardner, and I also have Michael Harris. Gentlemen, there's an epidemic that's going on in the U.S. with men's anger and domestic violence. And I just watched a show recently that we filmed and listened to a young lady talked about her husband, and he shot her, and this bliss that he was in and this rampage that he went in. And I said, listen, I need to get some people over here and have a conversation. And that's why I brought you gentlemen in. So Dr. Gardner, let's talk about that. Dr. Gardner, there's an epidemic that's going around with men, PTSD, and the anger and domestic violence. Is there a correlation with anything that's going on as far as PTSD is concerned?
Currently in our society, in our community, in the black male community, we're talking about joblessness. We have, in our households, we may have food insecurities, we may have other insecurities, but post-traumatic syndrome, post-traumatic stress syndrome attaches itself to our nervous system. It's something that's there, and all it takes is a cue, a sound, a smell to trigger those things. We can learn how to manage it, but it never goes away. It's something that we have to live with and learn how to manage it. And it's about learning emotional literacy. Something that we don't do a lot of teaching in our schools. We don't teach it in our communities. And it's something that we need to take the time to teach to our young men, so that when that comes about, when they feel stressed, that they'll know how to manage that.
Yeah, we just did an interview with Sharnita Pennington, and she gave this whole story and scenario about her husband and how he kind of plotted. Now, is that PTSD? Because that sounds like he is premeditated. You know, he's planning and plotting to actually take advantage of this young lady. Is that part of the same thing, or is that something a little different?
Well, it sounds like he groomed her,
right,
to cause her to be independent or caused her to be dependent upon him, so that he could take advantage of her dependence on him.
But that's not that. But he's not suffering from PTSD, right? He's manipulating.
He's suffering from some other things. He obviously needs to have control. It sounds like he has a narcissistic situation going on with himself that he needs to take a look at. But again, that's part of his need to have control. When we suffer from PTSD, part of our thing is to have control over the situation, the environment, the people in our environment, so that we don't lose control.
Mike, I know you do a lot of teaching in the church. And so my question to you is, with this phenomenon that's going on, do you at all talk to the men in church about these issues and as far as marriage counseling? Because one thing I'm learning is that before I got married and got divorced, maybe I should have had this type of counseling where you talked about that what is it called? Post-traumatic
stress disorder.
Yes, talked about that and talked about our anger and kind of deal with it from that level, right? Because most of the time we go to marriage counseling, we don't really ever hear that. You know, you guys believe in the same thing. You guys believe in God. You know, you guys get to know each other. But rarely ever do you hear somebody talk about, you know, do you have any anger issues? And let's get into that. Do you ever deal with that in the church?
Absolutely. And what I do, and it's going to sound weird in the sense of, but for that moment in time, I take God out of the equation.
Okay.
And I take him out of the equation because a lot of things God is blamed for that he didn't do.
Right. I understand.
So when I do that, then now we're able to deal with the issues. And so we go all the way back to the beginning. Okay, what attracted you guys together? Why did you come together? What is it besides sex? What is it besides money? What is it besides codependency? Let's deal with what's really going on. Who you are as a person, the man, and who you are as a person, the female. And if I can get that out of them in the beginning, then now we address the issues that the doctor talked about. And it's really interesting as far as how that's to be done. And a lot of people will evade. They will leave.
Yes.
People that stormed out of my office.
Right.
And my whole intent in that setting is to point out the things that they will deal with later that would be a great demise, that if we can deal with it now, either you shouldn't be married or you'll get married with an understanding of why you are together.
Yes. Okay. That's awesome. Doc, what about you in your office? Because I know you deal with young men as well, right? And one of the things that I've been thinking about doing is we're grown now, we're adults in our 50s, right? But these young men that's growing up kind of following our lead, somebody needs to grab them, and talk to them and teach them and educate them. I know you do some of that. How is that working out?
First of all, young men in our society and our culture are not allowed to emote. We're not allowed to display our emotions because we're taught to, men don't cry, men don't show their emotions. So first of all, we have to get past that and understand that we have to emote, because if we don't, all of that stuff is bottled up inside of us, and again, at the slightest trigger, here it comes. So what I try to do is teach young men to deal with their emotions. First of all, to understand what their emotions are, because some of the things that we think aren't emotions are, for example, love and hate are the same thing. They're just on the same spectrum. They're emotions. So again, to help them understand what their emotions are, how to deal with them, how to be empathetic toward others. And that's a huge thing. We're not really taught how to be empathetic toward each other. Our society has taught us that we have to be in control. Our society has taught us that by being in control, that's how we help and make everything work for us. And we're not in control. A lot of our behaviors work under the surface, and we do things unconsciously where they just happen. We are a slave to our emotions. A lot of our emotional triggers come from our perceptions about things. Perceptions are 9/10 reality. So if we perceive that we're losing control, we have a tendency to lash out to get that control back. And again, that's one of the things that I try to teach young men. You're not going to be in control all the time. You can't control another person. The only person that you can control is yourself. So again, it's about learning how to handle your emotionality. We're going to get angry. We're going to get frustrated. And again, to be able to handle those frustrations, we've been taught to handle our frustrations by physicality. Men are physical creatures, and the only way that we have been taught to handle our disagreements or to handle our anger is to be physical, and that's the solution to it. But in reality, that's not. We don't solve anything. As a matter of fact, we increase the problem by being physical, especially with our mates. Abuse has been going on since the dawn of mankind. And again, it's something that we don't talk about, and we have to start having honest conversations as men about how we deal with our women, how we deal with our children, because what we end up doing is perpetuating the problem.
Yes, and that's one of the things that I understood. I've been divorced now for I think 13 years, and as I reflect and ended up going to therapy, one of the things that I noticed, I said I was an angry guy. I'm not sure, and I wasn't beating on my wife, but sometimes my tone was, off the cuff, or she would trigger something. If you made me feel like I was weak, then it triggered something in me,
Or became embarrassed.
Absolutely. And so it triggers something, and then you go off, or you spent money without coming to me first. And that sounds like the control, right? Why do I need to be in control like that? And so when I went to therapy, I said, it seems like I didn't even know I was controlling until I had this conversation with my ex-wife. And tell me about this, because here's the interesting thing. I bought a car for her one day, brand new car, but she perceived it as control. I perceived it as, I'm your man, I'm gonna get you a car. But listening to Miss Pennington's story and the man buying her items, I'm now understanding, wait a minute, did she perceive me to be controlling? So I'm asking you, am I controlling? Was that a controlling move, or is just perceived from that based on her past? Because my heart was right when I did it.
In hearing Miss Pennington's story, this gentleman had means. He had lots of shiny things to throw around at this young lady, and that was part of his grooming to control her. I can award you this, I can give you that. And it sounded as though she was a materialistic woman who bought into the fact that I'm giving you these things, I'm the man, and here's how I control you. In your situation with the car, we think that's what we're doing is we're gifting her, and she was smart enough. Your wife was smart enough to say, okay, is he giving me this to have control? Because now, when the female is not accepting of those things, we become angry. It's like, okay, I'm your man. I'm supposed to be doing this for you, but you're not accepting this. So that's part of who I am.
Yeah.
I got money.
Yeah.
I can do this for you. And when you don't let me do that, that can become debilitating and embarrassing. And again, part of our issues, part of that trigger is embarrassment. We as men don't like to be embarrassed.
Yeah, we don't like to look weak.
No. And part of that weakness is that embarrassment thing.
I think also too, it may not have been, if it was perceived as controlling, as if you were letting her buy the car she wanted to buy, not the one you wanted her to have.
So I thought I was doing a good thing when I bought the car, right? And it was perceived as controlling, right? And I said, man, I got good credit. I can go get my baby a car. She was coming from out of town. She opened the garage and bam, there was the car. And then I get hit in the chest with, you didn't even ask me.
We, as men, we have to be conscious of our intentions because men and women think differently, they perceive differently, we communicate differently, and part of our task is to learn how to communicate with each other. A lot of times our intentions are misperceived on both sides of the coin. So again, I think it's imperative to make sure that our intentions are understood when we're dealing with a young lady, a female, especially one in our immediate environment. So be conscious of what our intentions are, or relate to our spouse or to our loved one what our intentions are.
Well, hold on, gentlemen. We're going to take a break right here. We're going to continue the discussion when we come back. We'll be right back with the raw truth. Welcome back to the raw truth. Let's continue, Mike. You had the floor. You was getting ready to tell us something before we went to a break.
Well, there were a few things I was going to mention. There was one where in the movie with, I think it was Michael Douglas, and I can't remember the young lady's name, and Danny DeVito, and it was called Romance in the Stone. And so there was a stone that they were going after, this big diamond. But toward the end of the movie, it wasn't the diamond, it was the woman. And Danny DeVito didn't have any interest in the woman because greed crept in. He wanted the diamond. But I think it was Kirk Douglas. No, one of the Douglas, the son, he turned everything around and was going after the woman. To the point where he gave the woman the stone. So the stone wasn't that important, but it was a metaphor for something much better. Right. So what I was going to say is, there's a word that comes to mind. It's called nebulous. And so in that word, it's hazy, it's foggy.
Yes.
It's not clear. It's a distorted picture. And when I was thinking about what you were saying, life is distorted.
Yes.
And it comes from the understanding of what's right and what's not right. I mentioned previously that I leave God out for a second. Now I bring him back in. Because we have to line it up to something that is greater than what we are.
Sure.
And so therefore we emanate, if you will, the life of Christ. And in the suffering, in the love, the unconditional love, and all of those things. And as we do that, to me, that's understanding. But it's hard to understand when you have the physical attributes or the tangibleness right there in front of you.
Yes.
As you see someone being murdered, as you see someone being beat, as you see all of that in certain areas and the way that you were raised, that was the way of life. So therefore, we grow up becoming or doing the same thing to what's more comfortable for us.
Yes, and one of the shows that we had with men cheating, one of the things that one of the brothers mentioned was that we've all been given the same blueprint, right? And most of us follow it. It doesn't matter if you're a celebrity with a lot of money, most of us follow that same blueprint, you know? I talked about what entitled me, or why did I think I was entitled to grab a girl's butt in the 4th grade without her permission, right? Why did I think I can do that? You know, and then as you get older, you continue doing different things now because you're getting older. And then it becomes an issue. But now I got a problem. I have a relationship problem, you know, with women. Now I got an issue because I saw all of these things growing up. And Pops didn't whip me. Pops didn't whip me from grabbing her butt. You know what he said? That's my boy right there. That's my boy. He ain't gay. That's my boy right there. That was a conversation at that time.
Well, he was reinforcing that sense of what you just said, entitlement and privilege. As a man, you were given a sense that you're privileged to do that. It's okay to do that, irregardless of how you made that young lady feel. This is my privilege as a man to be able to grab her inappropriately and it be okay. And then, as we just talked about, how we perpetuate those notions. Your father perpetuated the notion that that's my boy. He's doing the right thing. That's what men do.
Yes.
So again, we have to be cognizant of our intentions and what we're doing and how it makes women feel, or how it makes ladies feel about what we're doing.
Yeah.
I believe there's a validation. It's how and where
Good
it's
word.
coming from.
Good word.
Yeah.
There are a
You
lot
talk
of
about for
things-
us as men, we need validation.
We
Yeah, we
validate each
validate
other's
each
Oh, I see.
behavior.
Yes.
And when we come together, we're here now, raw
Yeah.
truth.
Yeah.
We're here.
Right.
Now we could be talking about things that would be in our favor that
Sure.
would bloviate us above each other or
Absolutely.
above life.
Yes.
But to
Pat ourselves
come-
on the chest.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Right. But to come together and to speak on this wise, it's an understanding.
Well.
It's sharpening
Yes.
of each other, that now we would take this and we would go into our different areas of community or whatever have you, work, and that we would be able to share a more positive perspective. And that's helping
Yes.
as far as the young and even some of the old and the people in the middle,
Yes.
as far as how we communicate and how we relate to them.
Yeah, that's a very good point too, because I think that I think the goal for the raw truth was for me to change the conversation from "that's my boy" to "oh boy, we better work this thing out."
Right.
It's a problem, you know. And being a former law enforcement officer, you see so many young men come to the system, and you look at them, you say, "That was me," you know, and they exhibit that same behavior that we used to, or in some cases continue to.
Well, I see it in elementary school boys right now, because as they talk with each other, part of their conversation is how many girls you got,
Right.
How many, how many girlfriends you got? Did you get to hit that? Did you get to do this?
Yes.
And again, it's promoting the fact that we have, as men and boys, that we have privilege and we have actually ownership over female's body, and that's not the case. And again, our intentions need to be a little bit better than that in what we're communicating with young ladies.
Doctor, is there a such thing as that? For instance, we exhibit this behavior and we continue to do it. Is there such thing at some point where it's actually turned into a sickness? Because I've heard something, what they call it, a sexual addiction, and then other types of addiction. Is there such thing as actually turning into an addiction, or is it just this is what I want to do and I don't plan on working on it?
Well, there are sexual addictions, but what we're talking about here is building behavior. Building a behavior that, again, is operating on an unconscious level, because we do things, again, most of our behaviors are functioning unconsciously. We do things like we get up in the morning and brush our teeth. This is
That's
something
normal.
we're thinking about.
Yes.
Our daily routines. Have you ever been in your car and the car is just driving itself and you doing something else?
Yes.
So again, a lot of these critical behaviors function unconsciously, and before we know it, they've happened. And here's the big thing, that we don't reflect back. We don't take the time to reflect back on those behaviors. And that's the critical piece that we need to start doing, is reflecting back on those behaviors. And once we start doing that consistently, we can, what I call, do forward thinking about, okay, am I correcting this behavior? I don't need to be doing, I shouldn't grab her, or
Right.
I shouldn't talk to her like that, or these
Right.
are the words that I need to be using if I'm intending to date her, or if I'm attempting to build a relationship with her. I have to be mindful of my language. So it's about building behavior, okay? And I wouldn't call it an illness at that point, but after it becomes a problem, then it can turn into an illness, whereby we become abusive. That's the illness, where we take that behavior and it becomes consistent enough and regular enough where it is a sickness.
Mike, what do you think, being in the church with your members and the young men that are coming up? And I know we've had some experience because we've been there and we done moved forward. Your counseling, is this set up to talk about men dealing with their emotions? Because most of the time we don't deal with our emotions. So when Doc's talking about communicating with our women, we don't really do that because we don't get on the emotional side of it, right? It's all physical. If we cheat on our woman, what we do? I go buy a gift. If I say I'm sorry, I go buy a gift. And for me, that's it, right? But for her, I don't want your gifts. I was watching Red Table with Jada Pinkett, and Jada Pinkett was Will was talking about, man, we got everything we need. We got the house, we got the car. Jada didn't care nothing about that stuff. And so here again, I am reprogramming my thinking now, because what I thought was the right thing to do is not necessarily the right thing to do, right? These women want to be cared for, but I'm asking, do we have the emotional capacity to do that? And if not, how do we teach that?
To me, the best way to express chivalry
Okay.
is to go back to who you are as a person.
Okay.
And so therefore, as we concluded, there are a lot of faults. There are a lot of things. There's a lot of selfishness. There's a lot of things that come into play that takes away from having to deal with the immediate situation. Or if it's dealt with, then it's justification.
Right.
And so I will justify on my behalf to
Right.
show you that you were wrong, even though I was wrong.
Right.
So my whole point is in counseling and in dealing with the young people is to show them that to love somebody is okay. To show them that to hurt is okay. As was said, it's how you approach it safely. It's how you get the proper counsel and the proper understanding of help. So when I'm talking to someone, I'm focused on what they are talking about. And what I do is I try to find the booby traps
Okay,
or
right.
the landmines. So right there it is. And then I take that and we deal with that very thing. It's not, and I'm not saying everybody do this, but it's a way of how you express compassion. It's really easy for me to express compassion because I've been through a lot of things in life.
Sure.
And I have learned from those things. And we always, when we learn, we want to be able to go back and help somebody.
Right, absolutely.
So to me, counseling is a very, very strong platform to be able to interject into a wrong situation to show something positive or right. And that's why I appreciate the counseling side of it. And I also appreciate that if you can understand or get them to see anonymity, then now when they're talking to you, they are more apt to open up,
Sure.
as opposed to thinking that you're prying and trying to get something
Yes.
that only benefits you and not them. So it's really, I mean, I like it. And yes, we do hit those things that are, to me, that are very important. To me, the most important thing is that they are talking. So if they are talking, then they can be helped.
Yes. So Doc, go ahead and tell us about the good news, because we need some good news.
Yeah, part of the good news is in my work, I'm on the National Advisory Committee on Mentoring, and women can't teach men how to be men. We have to do that. And one of the things that I am doing right now is attempting to recruit men to mentor young men so that we can teach them a different way. We have to teach them a different way. We can't rely on women to teach them a different way. We can't rely on culture to teach them a different way, because culture is teaching them violence.
Yes.
You know, in the music and what we see on film and what we see on TV. So we have to take hold of our young men and actually do some solid, hardcore mentoring, sitting down, having conversations with them like this, and how are they treating other people, particularly the females in their lives, or their sisters, or their mother. And that's where it all starts, that we have to sit down with our young men and teach them and talk to them and show them that there is a different way to handle themselves and become emotionally literate about themselves. Understand your own emotions and understand that we can be, our emotions can be hijacked at any moment. Okay? And when that occurs, to be able to go somewhere and sit down, take a deep breath and say, you know what, let me soothe myself. So that I don't go out and put hands on somebody or talk to somebody abusively or behave in an abusive manner. Because sometimes, a lot of times, as you talked about, we abuse ourselves first.
Yes.
So again, that good news, again, I'm spreading the word. He's spreading the word.
Okay.
You're spreading the word. Conversations like this help spread the word. And we have to do more of this.
Great. Well, gentlemen, it was a pleasure having you on The Raw Truth. I thank you guys for coming on and assisting me in trying to spread the word. Once again, thank you to all my viewers that was watching The Raw Truth today. Have an amazing day.